Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar, Mastering Local SEO, your roadmap to digital dominance. I'm just going to make some quick introductions here to give everyone a couple of minutes to join. First of all, I'm Andrea Catazone. I'm the CEO and founder of Senior Living Smart, and we're a digital marketing agency catering to the senior living industry. We partner with many experts like our speaker today to ensure that our clients are getting the best results. I'd also like to introduce today our facilitator, Carrie-Ann Pendergast, who is our amazing director of social marketing. Carrie-Ann does the directory and reputation management for all our clients, and in addition to the Google business profile optimization and social media management, all of which you're going to learn about that have a direct impact on our local search. So there's so much to learn about local search. So please don't hesitate to ask any questions at the end and take advantage of our great expertise on today's call. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce our special guest, Claire Carlile. Claire has a master's in marketing, a consumer behavior obsession, and a big fan of qualitative research. And I hear she's a lot of fun at a party. She's working with local businesses for over 20 years. She's a local search expert at Bright Local, where she writes and presents courses for Bright Local Academy and a faculty member at Local U. Claire is an expert contributor to the annual Local Search Ranking Factors Survey. Welcome, Claire.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. So let's just jump right in and get started. Let's just start with some of the basics of local SEO. For our viewers who don't know, can you give an overview of what local search is, what works, what doesn't work?
Big question to start off with. So I imagine that a lot of your listeners and watchers will have an interest in local search because in some way they offer a local service offering. So local search is exactly what it says on the tin, really. It's people searching for something with some sort of locational or geographic intent. So it is all of the search results that Google or any other search engine might make when we are making a search of something with some sort of geographical intent. And that might be because we're using near me in our search. We might be using like a locational modifier, like the actual name of the place, or we might not be using any modifier at all. And Google is using the context of the search to hedge its bets that our search has some sort of intent, locational intent.
Wow, so there's a lot to it that's going on in the background. Senior living is a real hyper-local search. The number one decision factor is location. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about local keyword search? How does that come into play when making content strategy that would benefit your SEO efforts?
I think when you're thinking, just coming back to searching for senior living provision, I would imagine that there are probably two ways that somebody might search in that context. So it might be someone that is searching from a location, looking for senior living services at that location. And I also imagine that it could be a child wanting to look after their parents, and they're making that search from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So they're adding in their geographic modifier. So think of if you think about your head keyword or your biggest volume search query, what would it be, would you say, for senior living services?
So what we've seen is probably assisted living.
So someone making that assisted living, maybe with a zip code, or it could be larger depending on where they're looking for. So the next part of your question, which you'll have to remind me what it was, talking about keyword research, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. So exactly like we've just said, really, before you sort of dive down into tools or anything like that, I think the most important thing when you're doing your keyword or your search query research is actually try and move into the mind of your prospective customers and those searchers, and just do something which I call a seed list, which is where you just have a whiteboard, a pen, a chalkboard, whatever, but just write it all down. What are all of the things that somebody might search for? So you're actually using your brain to think about, well, what do I know about the ways that people might search? And those might be the types of search queries that we would see as very much, let's say, they're bottom of the funnel. It's things that could, it's someone, they're already looking for assisted living for less mobile octogenarians near a certain place. That's someone that's basically ready to make an inquiry, through to someone making searches for assisted living versus whatever your primary competitor in terms of what would be the other options. So first of all, you need to think about all of those things. And then after that, what you can do, there is if I may say so, a brilliant free course in the Bright Local Academy about search query and keyword research, which will take you through all of the things that we've talked about, which is first of all using your brain and your knowledge of the marketplace, your geographic area, your customers, and then taking tools that you already have access to, like Google, and then taking some paid for tools as well. And that includes a little bit of competitor analysis to allow you to put together a keyword or a search query universe. So that is going to help you understand how you might target your potential customers at all stages of their journey, informational all the way through to transactional, and someone that is ready to actually work with you and buy your services, through to someone that's a bit more, I'm not sure, I'm thinking about different options, and it's going to be your job then to convince them that you're the best bet for them.
Great. Now, I love the idea of, starting with just using your brain and talking with some of your customers to say, what did you Google when you looked for us?
Yes.
But are there any platforms that you recommend after someone's gone through that process?
For sure. One thing to just to backtrack on that one. So when you ask your customers, they rarely give you a useful answer, because they will have maybe made 25 or 30 searches, and they might just say, well, I just looked for your name, because that's actually where they got to. Another thing that it's worth, I think, speaking to all the members of staff, especially the ones that are customer facing, people that answer the phones, is to understand what words people use when they speak to them. So I think doing that piece of work, which is lots of different people within your organization, competitors' websites. I'm thinking of all the free stuff before you get into tools, because we don't want to rely on tools, one, because they're tools, and two, because it's much more powerful if you come from a place of certainty or semi-certainty in your own mind. Otherwise, we can get thrown off by search volumes and by phrases which are actually very ambiguous. Okay, so I would say you've got all of those things. You've got competitor websites. You've got all of those important forums where your potential customers might hang out. So that is very dependent on your geography and on your niche. I think social media can be quite useful. Just doing searches yourself from within Google and seeing suggested searches people also search for. And then you've got your own bits of data like Google Search Console. Make sure you've got that and you've got access to all of those things, so you can have a look at your impressions data as well as your click data. And from there, I think it will be a question of going and having a look. Sometimes people have free trials. So we've got Ahrefs, we've got Moz. I mean, there are a lot of keyword tools. There are also ones that will, the data comes from a range of sources. So we are very, very careful with tools that we don't, we see their search volumes and their information, and we take it all with a massive grain of salt.
So better stick to your brain.
I think go with the brain first of all, and then maybe use search tools to understand, is this more popular than this? Or is this more popular than this? Rather than, because when we think about search strategy now, it doesn't come down to mapping out necessarily page to keyword. we need to think of it in terms of, it's topics. What do we need to be known for? And then we sort of cluster and put our content together based around that. And that's another thing that's sort of partly covered in the course, because you might end up with a massive list of search queries, but you then need to put them in buckets depending on, well, which of those is most important for me as a business, because that's the biggest return for me as a business. So it might be a lower volume, but it's going to be much easier for me to convert those customers and for me to basically make more money or do whatever it is you're trying to do. So I think it is so unique to the business, and asking yourself all those questions before you dive into any third-party tools is super duper important.
Sounds like it's an art and a science.
Oh, I love that. That's actually, yeah, something that I say in the course, which is just like, don't rely on those tools. You've got your big spreadsheet. Now you need to play around with it. Put that, let's bucket these words by intent. Let's bucket these words by topic. Let's bucket these queries in terms of what's going to help us reach our objectives. So you need to know all those things before you start your search query research.
Great, thank you. So how can we be sure that we're putting our best foot forward against our local competitors?
I think when we're talking about when we're trying to measure something, which is like when we talk about testing, are we putting our best foot forwards? We need to know what we're measuring. So we have some sort of robust measurement framework in place. And sometimes because we don't have metrics on our competitors, for example, how many times the phone rings, how many times someone fills an inquiry, we tend to default to rankings. So rankings aren't necessarily the best measure of our own success, but they are a good measure to see how someone else might be performing, just in terms of visibility. But we don't know how well they're converting, so we need to look at their pages. So one of the things that we look at, especially with a local business, if we're looking at, well, who are our competitors? First of all, we need to do the same question, which is, who do we think our competitors are? And then the next thing is, oh, actually, who are our competitors in Google for someone making a search for these types of queries? So those two things can be very different, because especially when we're working with a business owner that maybe doesn't know their marketplace as well as we do when we've really dived into the search engine results pages. So we're going to have a little look at it, especially with local businesses using some sort of GeoGrid ranking tool, like we have at Bright Local. So we are monitoring visibility around a certain location for a particular phrase. And so from that, we can see, okay, well, we have 60% dominance, but this business has 80% dominance. Why is that? Why do we think that might be? Is it purely because of their geography, sort of their proximity? Is it because of different signals that they're giving Google? That's why we can start pulling that apart and looking at their presence. It might be in the map pack, but also it might be in the organic search results in what we call the local, the regular links. So it's a big piece, pulling it apart. But yes, we can often look and say, oh, well, this person is basically cleaning up in my geographic area. They're in the top 3. I'm at number 4. How do I move us up into that third place or second or first to get us more visibility? So that is how I would go about understanding competitors in that sort of online Google sense.
Great, thank you. So at Senior Living Smart, typically we audit our clients' Google business profile every 6 months, just to make sure that it's a reflection of their website. Do you have any tips of what Google considers most important when optimizing a Google business profile?
Yeah, definitely. I think that if you have a little look, if anyone's interested in this, it is so every year the local search ranking factors gets updated based on the thoughts and feedback from, 30 or 40 people that work in the local SEO industry. So it's not like there's a hotline to Google and Google says, oh, these are the things you need to do. It's more just like, based on my work with whoever it is, These are the things that I think are becoming less or more important. And that's not just to do with ranking, that's also to do with conversions, because we could be ranking at number 1, but if our pages aren't converting and our listings aren't converting, then it's not doing a good job for us. As you know, the GMB signals or Google Business Profile or whatever we're calling it this week, those signals are important. And all of the basics, you know, name, address, phone number, primary category, are important things. Obviously, the page that it links to from your Google Business Profile is important. Your website is important in terms of being contextual, being authoritative, having the correct content, being well linked to, all of those things. So it's a big piece. With regard to every 6 months or so, I think the things that you'd need to look out for, it depends what industry you're in really, but if there are, Google does make changes to its category list. And I think this would affect anyone that Google either withdraws a category that you've chosen or adds a category which might be more relevant to your primary service offering. So that is something to keep an eye on. I think with assisted living, I'm not sure in terms of seasonality. It's not like your AC repair. You know, you're being AC repair and then you're being like boiler repair or whatever. It's the same, unless there are sort of new zeitgeisty terms that people use. Those are the only things that you'd need to be aware of, which is why we do our search query research, and we understand, you know, what are the things in the marketplace that could shift how people search and what they need to see. But Google Business Profile does change all the time in terms of the attributes. That's quite an important thing, taking a look to see what attributes have become available to your business type, to your niche, and also functionality. Google gives with one hand and takes away with the other, and you need to keep an eye on those pieces of the cake, really, because it might be that your competitors start using them before you do, and therefore get a bit of a head start. So I think taking a good look and understanding the changes.
Great. Any insights as to the value of Apple Maps, Yelp, and Bing places for business? I know we don't hear a lot about it, but is there value to be spending time on them?
I would say not as much as there is with Google, just because of market share. But I always say it's really important to keep your listing clean and tidy, compelling, and reflecting your offering wherever it is. If people can find that listing when they look for your brand name or your head search term within 2 pages, then I think it's probably important, especially when things like, you know, this isn't necessarily Bing related now, but to be aware that as search engines build out their knowledge graphs, they could be pulling data and information from like a smorgasbord of places that you thought weren't important or relevant. So that's another thing that you need to keep an eye on. Bing allows you to UTM tag up the link that you add to your listing. Which means that you could do a specific. What we'll do is we could include a link to that in your show notes. But it just means that you'll be able to see in Google Analytics where the traffic is coming from, basically. So we use UTM tagging for Google Business Profile because it allows us to see. It allows us to bucket the traffic to our website according to not just generic organic. It actually we know what's coming from our Google Business Profiles. So you can do the same for Bing. You can't do the same for Apple Maps. So that's the thing with those platforms, is it is difficult to measure. But you can imagine as Apple Maps or Bing could become like the native map system, maybe for a different car or a flying carpet or whatever it is that they decide to integrate with. Just keep in mind that growth in those areas is possible depending on who partners with who. So I'd say set it and don't forget it, but set it and you maybe don't need to update it as often as you would Google.
And I know there's tons of directories out there that people don't even know they're in. And I remember one client who purchased a new senior living, and we were trying to get her Google business profile set up, and the address was actually listed under a vape shop in one of that was thanks to Bright Local, we were able to correct those directory listings and make it correct. But yeah, it's amazing how many listings are out there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the nice thing about using third party trusted in terms of someone like Bright Local, is because you've got people working on those listings that are using the information that you give them, but they are just so fast and so experienced in getting that done in a way that where it just, if you try and do it yourself, it takes you a million years, and then someone else does it for you that is very experienced with those platforms, and they just get it done very quickly. So yes, it's a good idea, especially if you're inheriting something which is quite messy. So it's not just citation building, it is citation cleanup. Just trying to make sure that everything, points in the right direction.
Perfect. So a big thing in senior living, because it's a very emotional relationship kind of process, is review generation. And it's hard to get reviews. What's your advice on getting legitimate reviews, and how can we utilize those reviews to get the most out of them?
Okay. So I think, again, starting with an understanding of the whole journey in terms of what is the process of acquiring this new customer for you, how long does the journey continue, and when might the journey stop, and then working out when is the optimal time to do a review ask, and how to ask, basically. And you'd need to tell me about how that might work, but I'm thinking about if I was looking for, especially if I was looking for something for a parent, an elderly parent, and then I work with you to set I'm thinking, so I'm working with someone to set something up. Once that's set up and I am happy in that, setup, then would be a good time to ask. Maybe, not do strike while the iron is hot, in terms of the person is happy, you've given excellent service, your relationship has developed and has sort of bloomed into this positive thing that you hope will continue, and and then probably then is a good time for the review ask. But it all is dependent on on the individual product or service offering that you have. But obviously it's super duper important. We can't, it's not reviews will help you rank. Reviews are help a human being choose one product or service over another. And that's why we as business owners need to make sure that we get reviews, not just for stars, but actually for stories, and to help our potential customers make that step from being a potential to being a customer. So I think asking at the right time, asking the right way, and asking for reviews in the right places is what we need to do.
And would you normally send people to Google Business Profile to put in their review, or?
I think it all depends on the niche. Working, my experience has been working with sort of at-home care providers. And here, in the UK, which is where I am, we obviously have various niche websites that if somebody Googled the name of that business because they were doing a little bit of reputation research, those sites will come up at the top. So I think it's important that those businesses get reviews on those websites and that they are positive. So if you think about, if the business sits down and thinks about those review touch points, so it might be, well, they want some first-party reviews that they can use in their own marketing and on their website. They want some Google business reviews. They might want to look at their business profile to see if Google is pulling in reviews from other sites, in which case they need to manage those reviews there. And then I'd probably look at the first 2 pages of the search engine results pages to understand, right, well, what review stars are showing for my business here. So the priorities are really, personally, for me, Google business profile, first party reviews that you can do what you need to do with, and then those sort of niche specific, those vertical specific review sites would be my priorities. And then obviously sometimes we need to fix things if we've had a little bit of a blip in terms of provision. Sometimes we need to focus our efforts on additional sites just because we want to sort out some stuff that can look, negative in those places.
And if you do get a negative review, what's your recommendation? Like, say, for example, Google Business Profile.
Okay, my recommendation is to learn from it, first of all. I think that a lot of the time, some people can treat reviews as, it's this vanity metric, but really looking at the reviews of a business is like an insight into their souls. Because you can see most things about a business by looking at, 1, the reviews that people write for them, and 2, the way they respond to those reviews. So I think that as a business, having had a very hard think about, well, what do we do? If we have a negative review, how do we handle that? How long do we sit on it and process it before we write a heartfelt? You have to have some sort of strategy in place. So yes, we need to deal with negative reviews. There are lots of different ways of doing that. And there's some people that have written some excellent pieces about that. But I think as business owners, we all need to think about what we do before that actually happens to us. Because there are, in many cases, especially, if the review is awful because you are an awful service provider, then you need to pull your socks up and get better. But if the review is because there's been a blip, you're not an awful service provider, but honestly, something has happened, either miscommunication or something that you could improve and could be better. And then we need to sort of, put those hats on and say, how do we learn from this? How can we improve? How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? And how can I stop this person, how can I make them into someone that becomes an advocate rather than someone that is cross and upset?
Mm-hmm. Great. It can actually give you an opportunity to show how good you are by how you respond. And I loved when you said first learn from it. That's perfect.
I mean, I think probably out of the 3 of us probably don't reflect completely what normal people look like when they're in looking at the digital environment. The first thing that I always do is look at bad reviews for a business and then see how they've responded. Because I can, you can learn a lot about a business by looking at how they are managing these things. So I love looking at reviews and learning things from reviews.
Perfect. I always, when I see someone that has like all 5.0s and they're like 20 reviews, I get a little suspicious. Am I just a little
You're jaded. You're just jaded. No, I think if it was like just 20 reviews and they were all 5-star and I looked at them and they looked okay, and I could see why they were all 5 stars because I looked at the website and, it all looks really good, I would think, wow, yeah, okay, they're pretty good. If it was 394 reviews and they were all 5-star, then I might, you just don't expect to see that. Once you get this mass of reviews, and I know that Bright Local have done lots of research on people's thoughts about reviews, and there's that element of trust where I can't remember what the exact number is, but we trust if it's 4.3 to 4.7, I want it really at 4.5, depending on what it is. Especially if it's somewhere that you can weed out those awful ones and you can say, oh no, well, they're all about this thing and I'm not bothered about that thing. But if it's like, oh, there were mice dancing under the table, or then you're just like, no, I don't, no, thank you.
Great. I think we could probably go on, for a long time on reviews because it's such a big part of everybody's everyday life, I think.
Yeah, we do. We love talking about reviews.
But let's move on and talk about location pages.
Mm-hmm.
How can they help you elevate your local search rankings, and what are they?
Well, location pages, I can't remember, lots of different people refer to them in different ways. So you could have a page which is about your bricks and mortar location. So like a page for a place. So assisted living, they would, if you had 10, for example, each would have its own page on your website. And these would normally be the places that you would link to from your Google business listing. So rather than, if you've only got one location, then potentially it could make sense to link to your homepage. But if you have multiple locations in multiple geographic areas, it makes sense for you in terms of relevance and also signposting the people that visit your website to the right places, to have a dedicated page. So, for example, all the normal things that someone would expect to see on there: name, the name, the address, the phone number being very consistent, opening hours. It wants to be unique content, very geographically rich content, which sometimes is a real problem for people that are building out these pages at scale. But for somewhere like senior living, assisted living, absolutely, you've got gold in terms of content. You're describing where it is, photos of the place, photos of your people that live there doing things. You can have information about local services that you use. It's so easy to make those amazing pages. So they're super important for lots of different reasons. One, they give you all that rich content, which is good signal to Google geographically, and also to do with your primary services that you offer. But also, this is your chance to really convert people that come to those pages, and that's why we use sort of like testimonials, any sort of trust icons, any accreditations that you have, the qualifications that your staff might have, anything that allows you to really set yourself apart from your competitors on those pages. So that's what we need to be adding to those pages, is keeping them really rich and full, because they might be the first thing that people see.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. That was great information in terms of how to set up that local page on the website. Fantastic. So actually, I'm out of questions, but I know our audience, I'm sure, has some. So Carrie Ann, can you read off some of the questions that have come in?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the questions that we had was, are FAQ pages good for SEO? Should we have them? Why are they important? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that frequently asked questions is important for people because people have questions. That's why they're frequently asked. So what we do is we answer them in order for us to, again, answer people's questions, because that does two things. It stops them, we obviously want people to contact us, but we probably don't want them to contact us for things that could be answered quite quickly, so we basically want to take them down the journey to our sale or whatever our conversion event is. So FAQs is a great way to have relevant content on the page. It can inspire trust, because we already know what people want answering before they ask it. So it's a great way to, again, illustrate those unique selling points between us and our competitors. Now, when it comes to Google, it's relevant content on the page. I wouldn't say, add FAQ because it's good for SEO. I say add FAQ because it's good for people.
That's perfect. Makes sense. Let's see. Our next question is, how long does it take to see results from your local SEO efforts? So I always tell people it's a marathon, not a sprint, but I'll let you get into it.
How long is a piece of string is the answer. It depends on many things, like predominantly to do with competition. So if you're in a very competitive, imagine you've got, there are so many pieces to this, but yes, I think when we think about organic search and search engine optimization, if we're coming from sort of zero in terms of we're optimizing new content, we're making our site more authoritative, we're, increasing the importance of our entity, that's gonna take a while. And I think that is one of the reasons that it's so important to get all of the foundational pieces in place first. So that's not necessarily about SEO per se. That's good marketing. That's knowing who you are, what you do, who you serve, why you're, what the marketplace is, why you're better than your competitors, because those things then spill over into all of the channels that you work through, rather than sort of sprinkling some special SEO magic. It's everything, isn't it? So, but I think you're right. Managing expectation is very important. This is something that you plug away at. But it needs to be foundational, and it needs to be built on this sort of strong structure of understanding what it is that you do and who you serve, and getting everything right as far as you can, or at least better than your competitors.
So Claire, question is, and I'm totally in agreement with Carrie Ann that it's a marathon, not a sprint, but sometimes we have some impatient clients. Are there any like low-hanging fruit that may not like rise you to the top, but that could give you some quick wins?
I think probably in terms of our sort of map listings, so the rankings, just have a look at the local search ranking factors, making sure that you have filled in everything on your Google business profile. So all the basics: name, address, phone number, correct name. Hopefully you've got an address which is like somewhere well located as well. Primary category, super duper duper important. Now, I can't imagine that anyone is choosing the wrong category, because I'm not sure of your exact categories. Is it assisted living facility? What is your sort of
we use
category?
assisted living facility, retirement community.
Okay,
kind of depends on level of care, but
so again, play around with that. Primary, what do you want to hit? What is the most important here? Make sure you've got your secondary categories. If you've got services, which most people probably will have, make sure you've chosen the correct services. If you've got products, which you may or may not, make sure you're using products. Photos, super duper duper important. I would say people, I threw 10 photos in 20 years ago and no one's looked at them. You really have that. If you've got a content strategy, then why haven't you got a photos strategy? So you've got to get those up, whether it's events or special offers or posts, but basically use that Google business listing like you would your website. Make sure it is looking awesome. But again, primary and reviews, build your reviews, because those are the things, making sure you've got your primary category. If someone does see you, make sure that you're the person that they choose over the others. So I'd say those are the quickest wins in terms of really fill it out, make sure it's robust. But when it comes to your website, if maybe you've got a bit of a poor website that needs a rejig with regard to your information architecture, I'm not sure where that person would be coming from. But making, it's much easier to sort of control all that content and the look and the feel on your business profile. And then while you're beavering away, getting everything done on your website. I think that's probably the easiest win in terms of you can get it done and you can make it look awesome. Meanwhile, your website takes a bit longer sometimes.
Yes. That's terrific. Carrie, any questions? Any more questions?
Yeah. I thought something else. One thing, making sure that you use your reviews and the feedback that you get from your customers, because I think so often we forget to tell the stories of the people that we are serving, and we are serving so well. That can be the most powerful thing. So if you can repurpose reviews, then do so, because there is nothing as nice as reading someone else's feedback and you're like, oh, that could be me saying that thing. I want to see my mum or my dad in that position. So I think that could be like very compelling from an emotional standpoint.
That's a good point. And talking about that emotion and just photos in general on Google Business Profiles, it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember last month on the Bright Local event that I attended, the panelists said that the biggest cardinal sin right now is using stock images on Google Business Profiles. Can you touch upon a little bit of why that's a big no-no?
I think that's just because we again as human beings recognize stock photos, and unless you're being ironic, it's probably best just to not use them, unless it's a woman laughing at a salad, which is my favorite stock photo. So just get those real photos. You've got staff. In terms of consent and being able to use people's images, I think that's a sort of slightly separate conversation. But I have worked with medical clients and all sorts, which is someone's offering therapy or therapeutic services. They're not necessarily going to be able to have photos of the people that they're treating and their customers, but what they can do is have people on their reception, doing a staff meeting, whatever it is. I think, personally, so we should think about us as, human beings that are sort of looking at things. I would rather see, not a fuzzy out of focus photo, but I'd rather see a real photo than a stock photo. And I think, so that's just the human element. And then, if Google ever was going to, and I'm not saying they are, I'm not saying you will be penalized for using stock images, but if Google and Google's Cloud Vision, and we've always done reverse image search, I still do it on people's websites. If I think that man is not that man offering that service, I'll reverse image search and I'll see that, oh, well, he strangely is a plumber on 64 different sites. That's interesting. So, Google's going to look at stuff and know whether or not it's stock. And I think people do the same thing. So having some sort of way to upload your own photos and get regular photos is important, however you decide to do that.
Right, that makes sense. So you talked a little bit about the name, address, phone number consistency across different directories. Now, some of our clients use different tracking numbers, so those phone numbers don't always match up across the directories. Does that matter, or is it okay because that was a choice
I think
to use a different phone number?
I think that with regards to Google Business Profile, you can, as long as you have your sort of primary, when I work with the business, we always come up with like a master spreadsheet, which is like, this is the one spreadsheet to rule them all. This is your name, address, phone number. This is your short business description, your medium. These are your categories, because you can always then come back to that. So even if you're using tracking phone numbers, you should still have your original phone number. And the thing is, with Google, you can have your original phone number as your additional phone number, and you can use your tracking number, blah, 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 blah. Now, with regard to the tracking number thing, I don't use call tracking. I haven't used call tracking. But I'm wondering where we are with the iteration of, I don't know enough about this sort of the actual platforms, whether the next step is like some smart thing where it's the same phone number. But anyway, Google is quite clever, and people are quite clever. So I think if it really, I think when people use tracking, sometimes it's over tracking. Like, what are you actually going to do with this information? Wouldn't it be better just to use one phone number? But there we are. That's a different conversation for another day.
I agree. I think one of our kind of important questions here, we talked a little bit about backlinks and the importance for that authority and, the relevancy of building that. How do you get backlinks? How do you build them? Like, where should you even start? It seems like a big kind of project to tackle.
I think that one of the best ways to get them is by being brilliant and by being really good at what you do. Because that's probably the first thing to do, because if you're trying to outreach something that isn't brilliant, then it's going to be harder to do that. I know I keep talking about the Bright Local Academy, but Greg Gifford has just done a free course on local link building for local businesses, which has got loads and loads and loads of tactics in there, which is what people really want, isn't it? They just want lots of ideas of different ways. But I think if we look at it in terms of links as relationships and our business lives as full of relationships, what we can do is leverage our offline relationships onto online relationships, where we start thinking about, well, you know, who talks about me and in what context, and where would this be relevant for me to get the link from here, from here, from here. You've got all of these it's local opportunities. Is, you know, are you sponsoring something? Are you part of an event? Are you running like a dementia or an Alzheimer's cafe? Are you running an event that then can be linked to from other places? So we have to just think about all the things that we do and for whom, and whether or not any of those could result in a link. So that's how we can do it, just as like sort of marketers and looking at it from a sense of relationships. But obviously there are tools that we can use to look at our competitors' backlinks, so we can actually use software to grab them all. And then, like the piece of the keyword research where we said, now we look at it using our brain, you do exactly the same thing when you look at the links from your competitors. You can say, okay, well, here are the 4 people, okay, the organizations that I'm up against. Let's look at their backlinks. Well, these 60 all have the same anchor text, so they were probably bought at some point, and Google's probably not even looking at them. Oh, they've got a link from our local newspaper, so they have a PR strategy. That's a PR strategy. How can we have a PR strategy? You know, who can we talk to do that? So you start bucketing these links according to sponsorship, PR, special relationships, maybe writing really good content for somewhere locally that then they link back to you. So by looking at, you know, but a lot of the time we're just looking at other small businesses. Sometimes we're looking at like massive franchises that have got, you know, lots of people working for them in terms of content and outreach. But I think we can learn something from all of those. And I think especially, you know, as small businesses, if you do have the internal resource to get stuff done, you can be very agile because you can get stuff done quite quickly. But don't be scared by sort of link building or link encouragement, as I like to call it, because it's just about relationships and people. In my mind, a good link will actually drive traffic as well. You know, traffic that might convert. That's the way that I see it.
Awesome. That was a great answer. And the last question
was a long answer.
it was a great long answer. The last question is actually a personal one. Just, you know, we're a big fan of Bright Local. We use it, you know, every day for a lot of things. And is there anything that's kind of new and exciting on the horizon? Anything that you want to kind of talk about that's going on at Bright Local?
Have you played around with ActiveSync?
No, not yet.
Okay, so there's I can't remember what the posting software is called. So you can post Google Posts from within the platform now, and ActiveSync basically monitors for changes in your Google business profile. So then you can automatically go back in and say, you know, no. That still is our phone number, or no, we're open for this and this is my primary category. So I think that can be useful, particularly if you're managing, you know, a large number of listings, just to have an email that comes through and says, oh, your hours have been updated, and you think, well, you know, no thank you, because, you know, we do understand that there can be so many different ways that Google can update our listings, you know, whether that's third party, whether it's a Google, you know, a guide or something. But a lot of the time it's actually Google scraping information from somewhere elsewhere and deciding that it likes that information better. So if Google keeps scraping and changing your hours, it's probably a good idea to look at the page on your website that gives your hours. Because if you change it to the right thing there, Google might stop changing it.
And Claire, can't people make recommendations? Like I remember getting notices, someone thinks your phone number should be this, and I'm like,
yes. So the more consistent that we are, which is why I come back to that sort of that template, that document of truth, in that Google is going to be looking at the whole of the web to confirm what it thinks it knows about you. So rather than playing whack-a-mole and going, I need to change that, I need to change that, I need to change that, what we need to do is go, this is my truth. Okay, this doesn't, this is going to live on my website. This is where everything lives, but this is my truth. And I'm going to make sure that when I build something new or I do something new, I refer back to my truth, basically, to make sure that everything is joined up. So yeah, that's pretty important, because I think that, increasingly, Google is looking at everything that exists about your entity and your business. Sorry.
It's scary, actually.
It's scary, but it just means that, so rather than us thinking all the time, oh, I need to update that thing there, it's like, no, we need to think carefully about what it is that we do, what we are, who we serve, and be very consistent in the words that we used for our business, rather than keep coming back to, oh, it's a problem with this and it's a problem with that. It's actually just a problem with us not being consistent a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anything else on for questions, Carrie-Ann?
That was it for questions.
All right. Well, Claire, I can't tell you, I just love spending time with you. I learned so much. I always laugh. I love your webinars, so thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be sending this webinar to anyone who signed up. And also I encourage you to look at some more of the stuff that Claire has come up with. She can be found on LinkedIn at Claire Carlile or ClaireCarlileMarketing.com. And she has some really amazing SEO courses on Bright Local Academy.
There's some, basically everything on there is just it, and it's free. It's just like, go and learn the things. It's free.
It's wonderful. And thank you, Carrie-Ann, for facilitating and getting this all set up. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely to be here.
Thank you so much, Claire.